Guys, if you're over 40 years old and you're still out here just sort of winging it with your money, you're already behind. But the real danger is that most people won't even realize that until it's too late. The fact is, you are getting older, right? No need to sugarcoat this thing and lie to you and make things sound better than they are. But here's the kicker now. This is the big kicker. It's not too late for you. Just because you're near 40 or over 40, over 50, you got time. The first thing you got to do is recognize that you, in fact, do have time. You don't have to give up. You don't have to stop. But you do got to be honest and realistic with yourself about where you are with your personal finances and your age, right? But life ain't over. You may be behind, but you're not out. Many people build their wealth in their 40s and their 50s. It can be done. You got to think about it like this. You may end up living to be 80 or 90 years old. Look, if you're 40 years old right now and you live to be 90, that's still 50 years. There's a lot of wealth building that can take place in 50 years. Even if you're 55 years old right now watching this video, you may live to be 85 years old. That's 30 years. That's a long time. Look, I look at life really in 4 quarters, just like a football game, a basketball game. I look at life in 4 quarters. The very first quarter of the game of life is between ages 0 and age 20. That's when you're just getting started. Wet behind the ears, you don't know what's taking place, you don't know what's going on. It's somewhere between 0 and 20 years old. You really can't help what happens in that first quarter of life because you was born into a family or a situation that you had no control over. The game just is what it is, right? You usually have no money in the first quarter, most of us. No money to speak of in terms of our own personal lives, right? But then by quarter 2, you get a feel for how this game is played and for what you need to do based on where you started at in the first quarter. So the second quarter is ages 20 to 40. Now in ages 20 to 40, this is when you can win or lose the game of life if you're not careful, right? Depending on what you choose to do in the second quarter, how hard you plan on going in the second quarter, what decisions you make in the second quarter. First quarter, you had no choice. It is what it is. It's a game that's going on. Second quarter, now you begin to make decisions that's going to shape the rest of your life. That's between ages 20 and ages 40 with your personal finances, right? If you do things right in the second quarter of the game of life, you can coast in the fourth quarter. If you really put the full court press on, right? That means in the second quarter, it's time to regroup, time to rethink, time to make good decisions, time to work hard, time to grow up because you know what you want out of life, right? If you came into the game of life in the first quarter with nothing, in the second quarter is when you can decide to have something between ages 20 and 40. Now look, when you get to age 40, that's halftime. What do people do in a game at halftime? They go in, take a break, get some water, relax, discuss the game plan with the coach because they want to come out in the third quarter killing the game, right? So third quarter of life starts at age 40. And that's why you see me do a number of videos about age 40, because after age 40, third quarter between ages 40 and age 60, that's when you can really make a dent and make a difference, because a lot of people mess up in the first and second quarters of life. I get it, right? I was there too. But guess what? That third quarter, no more excuses. You know what this game's all about. You over 40 years old, you 40, 50 years old, you know what this game is all about. You know what you got to do to get better. You know what you got to do to win the game, right? By this time, third quarter, you should be mature in this game. You can win and lose the game of life in terms of your personal finances and other areas between ages 40 and 60, that third quarter. Look, the third quarter may be the absolute most important portion of your life. That's why I say if you're over 40 years old, you need to watch this video because you need some encouragement this third quarter to keep it going. Even though you made mistakes when you was 20 and 30 years old, 35 years old, now you got a chance to redo this thing. It's the most important quarter of your life for most of us. Then of course, ages 60 through 80, that's the fourth quarter, right? Everything you do in the first 3 quarters is so you can chill and relax in the fourth quarter of the game and not be scrambling and trying to come back and trying to make up this and make up that, right? You need to be chilling in the fourth quarter. So what I'm telling you about on this video is to get you to chill in the fourth quarter because you'll be a winner. And anything over age 80, I consider that to be overtime. If you make it to 85 and 86 and 95, You're working in overtime, chilling, relaxing, enjoying yourself. That's a bonus for most people. But if you want to chill in the fourth quarter and you made mistakes like most of us in our 20s and 30s, you need to go hard in the paint in your 40s and 50s third quarter. We got to get real about this retirement age thing, right? We don't want to assume that we're going to be working until we're 80 and 90 years old in the overtime. We got to get real about retirement age and what we want and when we want to retire, if we ever want to retire. Look, you don't have to retire. You can keep working forever if you want. More power to you. I'm not mad at you if you do that. But I want you to have the choice to do that and not be forced to do it. But as you get older, you got to think about this. You have health issues that literally come out of nowhere, right? You wake up and your knee is hurting. You wake up and you got a bad shoulder. You wake up and your neck is hurting, right? These things just come out of nowhere the older you get. So you got these health issues. You got potential layoffs, especially in the third quarter of life in your 40s and 50s. You got these caregiving responsibilities that might pop up from your parents or from the people who raised you who now need help. Could be an uncle, aunt, could be anybody, brother, sister, parent. You got these type of responsibilities that start to crop up, and all these types of things can force you to start thinking about retiring a little bit early. So my suggestion is, if you're in your 40s and 50s, you're in the third quarter of life, I suggest that you start planning financially as if retirement is going to come sooner than you expected or sooner than you may want it, right? It may not, but the older you get, the higher the chances that it may. There could be things that come up that force you to have to stop working. You just don't know. So it's better to be prepared and not need it than to need it and not be prepared. And so at some point in the latter half of this third quarter of life, that's in your 50s, and as you get closer to age 60, you need to think about shifting your focus with your personal finances from the accumulation stage of wealth to more of the preservation phase of wealth, where you're trying to hold on and preserve your money to last the rest of your life, right? When we're in our 20s and 30s and 40s, we're accumulating money, we're saving money, and we're investing a whole lot of money. But as you get towards age 60 and even a little bit older into the fourth quarter of life, you want to get to the point where you start to preserve these investments so they last. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that when you get to over age 40 or over age 50 that you have to shift into this scared and fearful mode. I'm not saying that, right? I'm not saying you got to be ultra conservative in your 40s and 50s when it comes to investing. And that's what a lot of people tend to think. Oh my gosh, I'm 50 years old. I can't be risking the stock market. Well, you probably could risk investing in some more volatile or less conservative stocks in your 50s with no problem. But you need to be thinking about the preservation stage. But don't stop growing your assets because you turn age 45 or age 50 or age 55. You don't need to just say, I'm done accumulating, because you're going to continue to accumulate, right? This is not the time to get lazy and fearful with money. It's just the time where you need to be thinking and shifting your thought process. How do I have enough money to last me for the rest of my life? Another big thing as you get to be in your 40s and 50s, the third quarter of life, is don't be the person that counts on Social Security only as your only means of income as you get older. Look, we don't know what's going to happen with Social Security in the next 10, 15 years. But whatever happens with it, Social Security is never enough alone to get you where you want to be, right? The average Social Security benefit, I think, is around $1,700 or $1,800. That ain't enough for most people to live on, right? So think about Social Security not as your means to live on when you get age 62 or over, but think about Social Security as a supplement, something to go along with the other money that you have, that you're building up, right? It's a supplement. It's not a strategy. Don't be that person that makes Social Security the sole strategy of what you're going to live on when you're older. Guys, if you're getting any value from this video, do me a favor, smash the like button, and most of all, share this video with someone who you know could use this valuable information. Also, feel free to drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Now, let's get back to the video. And another thing you want to do as you get over the age of 40 is you need to start tracking your net worth on a regular basis, at least 3 or 4 times a year. Do a calculation of all the assets you own and what they're worth, and all the liabilities that you owe, and figure out that difference and see where you are. First of all, what you pay attention to is going to grow in the direction that you want it to grow in. But second of all, you want to be focused on building up assets, and you want to be focused on reducing your liabilities. Assets give you choices. Assets give you the ability to make decisions with what you want to do, right? The one thing you want to have when you get older is you want to have choices, right? Just ask anybody in the fourth quarter of their life, age 60 to 80, or anybody over the age of 80, what's the one thing they want to have? They're going to tell you, I want to have choices. I want to be able to make my own decisions about whether I work or I don't work, whether I get up and do this or get up and do that. I want to have freedom to do what I want to do. That means freedom to make the choices you want to make. The best way to have choices is to have ownership of assets. Secondly, there ain't nothing comfortable about walking into the fourth quarter of life after age 60 with a whole bunch of bad debt. Bad debt being debt on anything that's not increasing in value. Debt is one of the main reasons that keep a lot of people working and not doing what they want to do when they get to be 65 and 70 and 80 years old, because they got to pay off some debt. So you don't want to be walking into your retirement after age 60, fourth quarter of life, with a whole bunch of bad debt. That's like walking into the fourth quarter of a game being down by 15 points. And who wants to walk into the fourth quarter behind with ground to make up? Like, you got to go extra hard. Like, you don't want that. Trust me, it's scary. It's no fun trying to walk into the fourth quarter of life after age 60 with car payments, with student loan payments, with personal loans, with a whole bunch of credit card debt. You lose your freedoms with all that. It ain't nothing but stress and anxiety that you don't need and don't want. So you cannot really afford, when you get over 40 years old, you can't afford to just drift through life financially and just chill and not be intentional and not be focused, right? You can't afford to do that. So knowing what you own, knowing what you owe, that's going to give you some power. And being intentional with paying off the bad debt and increasing your assets is going to give you the ability to make some choices as you get older. And then there's this temptation. Let me talk about this temptation real quick. There's this temptation as we get into our 40s and our 50s, we get a little older, we start forgetting about the idea and the notion to live below our means. Listen, you're better off as you get older, over age 40, learning to become more and more frugal, and even consider downsizing and needing less stuff as you get older and older. We all know somebody who's like over 70 or 80 years old who's got a whole bunch of stuff and they can't seem to detach themselves from the stuff, right? They're either hoarding a bunch of stuff, or they're collecting a bunch of stuff, or they have a bunch of stuff in their home. Listen, as you get older, you need to get away from this need of stuff to be around you. You need to maybe consider minimalizing, becoming a lot more frugal, and doing your best to intentionally live below your means and needing less stuff, right? Because as you get older, this whole lifestyle creep becomes your enemy. So when you get in the third and fourth quarter of life, you got to have the strong will and ability to tell yourself, no, I don't need it. No, not today. No, I haven't saved up money for it yet, right? Saying no to unnecessary spending is really like a superpower as you get older. You got to say no to some things in the third quarter so you can have more things and more choices and more decisions and more abilities to do what you want to do in the fourth quarter. And you want to make sure when you get over age 40, you have a fully funded emergency fund. I don't have to tell anybody who's over age 40 that stuff happens, right? Things happen and you need money. You need a safety net. 5 to 6 months of your monthly expenses saved up somewhere that you can get to the money quickly is important as you get over age 40, right? You shouldn't be 45, 50 years old and be shocked that something happens when you need an extra $2,000 or $3,000. You shouldn't be shocked about that. You should know that that's going to happen. So you should be prepared, right? Because listen, one big $10,000 setback in your 50s, that can derail a lot of what you're trying to do in the fourth quarter after you reach age 60 and 70. And something else you want to think about when you're over age 40, and that's maximizing your retirement contributions. Remember, if you're 40 years old and you live to be 80, that's 40 more years. So don't just believe that, I'm getting older, life is older. You can go ahead and max out your Roth IRA, max out your jobs retirement account. Max that stuff out if you can. And if you're over 50, a lot of these retirement accounts allow you to play catch-up modes. They allow you to put a little more towards it. Think about doing that as well if you can. But we got to remember, when you're over age 40, time is shrinking, right? We just got to be real about that. And then you also want to think about, as you get over age 40, diversifying your income streams. Now, I'm not saying you got to have 20 different income streams, but more than just a job is a good thing, right? A job is the highest taxed earnings that you're going to receive in America. So you might as well get some additional income streams that are not tied to a job and earned income, right? I'm talking about dividend income from investments, maybe some rental income from some real estate investing, a side business or side hustle, some royalties, right? Maybe something like YouTube, maybe get a YouTube channel. Look, anything's possible. The point is you need to not just only have all your money flowing in from one job. That's risky. The more you rely on one source of income, the more fragile your financial future is going to be. And one of the big things you got to think about when you get over a certain age and you get a little older is you got to make sure you don't fall for the scams, right? And I know the scams are really played against a lot of people, really all ages, but they're really targeted to people in the fourth quarter of life, right? Over age 60, right? If you're over 40 years old, you start accumulating some money, you're a prime target for scams or for, high fee insurance products that they'll pitch to you or other risky deals you got to be careful about. It ain't just 25-year-olds that's getting scammed out here. It's a lot of 40, 50, 60-year-olds that are getting scammed too. And then one of the big things is don't let fear, as you get a little older and you get closer to retirement and you don't feel young anymore, right? As you get a little older with your money, don't let fear kill growth. Now, earlier I mentioned how you want to be thinking about the preservation stages of your wealth when you get over 40, right? I'm not telling you to totally let fear take you over and say, oh my gosh, I got to be really, really conservative with my investments. No, you don't want to do that. You don't have to be overly cautious with your investments just because you're over the age of 40, right? You still want to get the benefits of growth of the money that you're investing. The point is, it's all about balance. You want to still get the growth and still be a little more risky with your investments, but at the same time, be thinking about the preservation. Be understanding where you are with money. Now listen, there's a lot of people like me who's well into the third quarter of life, right? Almost getting to the fourth quarter of life, who don't want to be conservative with their investments. And that's okay too. You don't have to be, but you do want to be thinking about how you're going to preserve this wealth for you in your latter years or for the kids and grandkids that you want to pass the money on to. And you want to be thinking about how much you're going to need in your retirement on a monthly basis, right? I know it may be 10, 15, 20 years off, but still be thinking about it. What is the withdrawal strategy that you plan to use at the age of 55 when you want to retire, or the age of 65 or 70 when you want to retire? How are you going to be pulling your money out and using your money? Is it going to be a 4% withdrawal rate, 3%, 5% withdrawal rate? What's it going to look like? These are things you should be thinking about when you get 40 and 50 years old. And don't forget to factor in healthcare cost, right? This is one of the most biggest expenses that people have when they enter some type of retirement in the fourth quarter of life that they don't even think about until they get to the fourth quarter. Look, I'm telling you, it's third quarter. Be thinking about what it's going to cost for healthcare. And we know policy and things are going to change maybe before you get there, but you still got to factor that in because it's important. The older you get, the more chances there are for things to happen to your health. And you got to make sure you can pay for those things. So you want to understand supplemental insurance, healthcare insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, and long-term care, right? Understand those things. Get educated on those things. Don't wait until you get 65 and ready to retire at 66 before you learn those things. Because a lot of the learning you do 10, 15 years earlier is going to help you better prepare for when you may need them. And not to mention your estate planning. Look, everybody needs an estate plan. If you have over, 10, 15, 30, 50, $100,000, $200,000 that you could leave to somebody behind you, you got to have an estate plan. That means a will, a power of attorney, a healthcare directive, power of attorney, right? All that. An estate plan is money well spent, right? No matter what your net worth is, you need to protect your family from confusion, from court costs, and from the drama that comes along when there's $100,000 or $1 million sitting over there and nobody knows where it should go or who should get what. You avoid all that when you do an estate plan. And not to mention, you want to always review who are your beneficiaries. Who have you set up as the beneficiary on the 401k? Who have you set up as the beneficiary on your Vanguard account? Who's the beneficiary on the life insurance that you have outside of your job, which you should have also, right? Who is the beneficiary on that life insurance? Or even on your bank accounts? Who's the benefit? You got to know all this stuff. You got to take inventory of your financial situation, the whole big picture. And these are things that you should be thinking about when you get over the age of 40 and you're in the third quarter of life and you're trying to win the game so you can chill in the fourth quarter. You got to think about all these things. And some of these things are not real comfortable to think about. Some of these things we just kind of sweep under the rug and just chill and don't worry about them until the time comes. I'm telling you, the time is right now to get it together as you get into this third quarter of life. This is the second half of your life. You only get one of them, right? And then finally this, look, talk to your family about all the stuff we're talking about. Don't make retirement and death some type of secret, right? So you got to let your spouse know, your kids know, your grandkids know where everything is and what everything is and how it's all designated. Have these meetings, right? Have these meetings where you talk to everybody about what's going on. Look, if you're near the halftime of life, which is age 40, or you're over age 40, these are the things that you need to be researching, thinking about, talking about, Googling, plugging into Chat GPT or Gemini or Claude, whichever AI, LLM that you use. These are the things that's going to help you chill when you get to be 65, 70, and 80 years old. Do me a favor, guys. Share this video with somebody, anybody, no matter what their age, because you can start this whole process when you're 25. Everybody needs and can use this information, no matter what quarter of life they're in. First, second, third, fourth, or even overtime. Look, I do one-on-one financial mentoring and coaching. Check out that link in the description box below. Click on that link in the description for more and smash the thumbs up button for me and drop a comment below. If you got value from this video, just say, hey, I got value in the comment section below. That way, hey, I know that I can bring you more of this information that's needed. Hey, if you want to know why most people who make six figures today are still struggling, check out this video right here next.